Reports out of Pullman, Washington have Kirby Moore interviewing for the Washington State head coaching position, though people in Columbia sure disagree with that.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And on today's program, you know what? I'm tired of whining about Missouri basketball's defense. Let's just try to outscore everybody. I think that's really the best path forward for Dennis Gates and company. Also a disappointing and yet understandable entry on the football side into the transfer portal. Before I start the program, I do want to tell you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. And some interesting stuff happening in the, sports reporting world yesterday as CougFan.com, an offshoot of 24/7 Sports, by the way, was reporting that Kirby Moore was in Pullman, Washington yesterday, interviewing for the head coaching position at Washington State. Of course, Kirby Moore, currently the Missouri offensive coordinator. And speaking of 24/7 Sports, as most of you know, PowerMizzou.com is an offshoot of 24/7 as well. And Gabe DeArmond over there was saying, you know what? He's got a couple sources that are saying that Moore was not in Pullman yesterday. And I'll say this, Greg Woods, a reporter in Pullman, he posted a video that was allegedly of Kirby Moore pulling away in what looked like a Nissan Pathfinder, I believe. Hey, thanks to Nissan, one of our finest sponsors. But regardless, I got to say, I paused that video, looked at the passenger side of both of those videos, and I can't come to anything conclusive, but it sure didn't look like Kirby Moore was in either one of those vehicles. And Woods, by the way, when he first got some pushback from Gabe DeArmond on this report, he initially took this tweet down, took the video down. It's now back up. So it seems like both sides are kind of digging in here. I'm not really sure what to believe, though. I tend to agree with what Gabe DeArmond said this morning when he was basically saying, now, wait a second. Does this mean, do you need to actually show up in Pullman to interview for a head coaching position anymore? Usually that's the type of thing that you do when it's a done deal, when it's basically all but the ink is dried at that point. So I tend to believe Gabe DeArmond's sourcing here. So I'll just say that. But second of all, I think most interestingly here, whether or not Moore makes a move or even has any interest in a move to be Washington State's head coach, I have absolutely no idea. But I will say this. It's now been a couple cycles here where there's at least a little bit of noise with Kirby Moore at least having interest from other schools in being a head coach. And if you're a guy in your mid-30s like Moore is, a young offensive coordinator up and coming, I certainly don't expect him to be Missouri's offensive coordinator forever. So I could certainly see a position where, hey, Kirby Moore could find a nice landing spot here. Who knows? I could certainly see him being back with Missouri next year as well. I think regardless, something's got to change with the Missouri offense. Whether it's how Missouri and Moore and Eli Drinkwitz approach the passing game, or simply put, maybe Moore moves on and Missouri is forced to get into the offensive coordinator market. If that's the case, as I made reference to yesterday, Missouri has an extra $4 million to throw around specifically for the assistant coaches and the football staffers. So if indeed this is the case, if Moore decides to move on somewhere, anywhere, maybe to the NFL with his brother, who the heck knows? I'm just saying, if hypothetically that happened, this would actually be great timing for Missouri because, frankly, we've got all the money in the world you'd want to spend at the offensive coordinator spot. And you know what? The transfer portal still does not open here for a few more weeks officially, but Of course, we are going to hear about names trickling out here slowly but surely, not just at Missouri, but elsewhere as well throughout the country and the SEC. But Marquise Davis, Missouri running back, true freshman this past season, is going to enter the transfer portal. And I will say this is a disappointing one simply because I really liked Marquise Davis's talent. In fact, I think you're going to be seeing a Keywan Lacey situation here for Missouri once again. Now, I'm not saying Marquise will be as productive as Keywan Lacey was for Ole Miss this past season, but I am almost certain that he will draw the same type of interest this offseason that Lacey did in the previous one. I just think Davis is an obvious talent who is frankly just behind Jamal Roberts and Ahmad Hardy, and those guys look like they're almost certainly coming back next season. Hardy, for example, is not NFL draft eligible yet, so as I've pointed out a million times, one thing Missouri's done rather well is retained the talent it already has. That's true in basketball and football, by the way. So I have every reason in the world to believe that Ahmad Hardy will be back in black and gold next season. So if Ahmad Hardy's going to get 20 to 25 touches a game, Jamal Roberts is going to get his maybe 15 to 20, whatever it might be. Missouri's probably going to be a run-heavy unit once again next season. Well, despite that, that just doesn't leave a lot of opportunity for carries or touches for Marquise Davis or anyone else for that matter. So Missouri already saw another freshman, Brendan Haygood, enter the portal as well. Unfortunately, this is kind of a high-quality problem because Missouri has been so good under Eli Drinkwitz and under Curtis Looper, the running backs coach, at finding and developing talent at this position. Unfortunately, you can't keep them all. I wish we had that problem at the quarterback position, quite honestly. Hopefully, we'll get there eventually. And hopefully, by the way, when it comes to getting there eventually, hopefully Missouri will get there eventually with Trent Pierce. Because on the basketball side, Dennis Gates was speaking on Tiger Talk here this week and said, quote, "On Pierce, he has not progressed. The doctors still have him in the holding pattern that they've had him in. He's working with strength and conditioning, training room, and they're slowly but surely just trying to figure out how he's reacting. So there's treadmill work, there's return to play protocol. It's just no contact and things like that." So I will say to all of the people who have been frustrated with Dennis Gates and his messaging about Trent Pierce, well, other than actually diagnosing a specific injury there, that's a pretty good update. I mean, he's just being honest with us there. Again, he has not progressed. What more do you need to know at that point? Until we get an update that Trent Pierce has progressed and has returned, most importantly, to the practice floor as a full go in practice, well, quite honestly, there isn't that many reasons to worry about this or even ask the question at this point. When Dennis Gates, I'm sure he'll give us an update when Pierce returns to practice, but until then, I think we might as well just assume that Pierce isn't coming back anytime soon, unfortunately. And by the way, when it comes to Missouri basketball, obviously having Pierce back, well, you'd think that's going to help in theory, certainly the offense, maybe the defense a little bit too, just with Pierce's size and length and ability to get defensive rebounds. But I have to say, for as much as I am bothered at times by Dennis Gates and his defensive principles and, well, just this team in general, I don't think has the horses to be very good defensively. I think it's time for Missouri to just say to heck with it and try to outscore all of their opponents. And, well, the important word there is try. That's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I'll agree with that. But you know what? We'll talk more hoops coming up on the show. And also, yes, prices are going to be going up at Faurot Field in 2026. So let's get to all that here in just a minute. But you know what? The holidays are also officially here, which means it is time to hunt for gifts. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, well, it's Aura Frames, the gift that delivers every time. And it's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories. My favorite thing about Aura is it's not just the average picture frame. You can pre-load the frame with photos before giving it to your gift recipient. So when they plug it in, the memories are already there. So this is a perfect kind of gift to me for the less technologically savvy. Maybe you have some grandparents, some parents in your life who aren't great with an SD card or an app. Well, guess what? You can do it for them. Load it up for them, and they're going to have not a homework assignment, but a wonderful gift to open on Christmas Day or whatever your favorite holiday is. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That is auraframes.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. You know what? After a hangover, I think, from a disappointing first-round loss last year to Drake and a start to the Missouri basketball season that, well, not exactly a lot of signature victories so far, especially after losing a couple in a row to Notre Dame, and especially a significant, well, pretty good beatdown in the second half there by the Kansas Jayhawks this past Sunday. I think there's some Missouri fans who are down on Dennis Gates right now. And I don't want to give that impression. I'm not down on Dennis Gates, but I will say I would like to see a defensive adjustment in philosophy from Coach Gates next season at the very least. In my opinion, the first year Dennis Gates was here, when Missouri was playing Noah Carter at center, who's 6 feet 6 inches tall, I believe, when they're basically playing, their biggest guys are Kobe Brown and Noah Carter. Well, junking it up, trying to speed the opposition up, do a lot of trapping, all that kind of stuff. To me, that made all the sense in the world. But Missouri should probably be beyond that at this point, especially when you do have some. Certainly Sean Phillips is a good rim protector. The rest of the guys we can talk about. But my point is, at a certain point, I think Missouri's got to play better fundamental defense. That's just my more straight up defense. Let's put it that way. I think Missouri has a habit of over-helping and over-trapping, that type of thing. But when it comes to this season, I just don't see a lot of realistic adjustments that Missouri can make to where they can be a decent defensive team and yet still score the basketball at a clip necessary. You saw that especially in the second half, well, the first half too, really the entire game against Kansas. Missouri struggled offensively. And one thing I said was, hey, I would have liked to have seen more Luke Northweather in that game, particularly in the first half. And I believe it was Drew King over at Power Mizzou. Forgive me for not knowing that 100%, but I'm pretty sure that's the case, that King had some good numbers that pointed out that when Mark Mitchell and Jacob Cruz and Luke Northweather, when those three guys all play together, well, all of a sudden Missouri has one of the best offenses in the entire country. And small sample size, though that might be, that makes all the sense in the world to me, because as I pointed out before, when Mark Mitchell has space to operate, whether it's in the fast break in particular or even in the half court, he's really hard to handle for almost anybody. Just his combination of size and agility is just, and skill, of course, around the basket, ball handling. It's just not something you see every single day in college basketball. But of course, when he's surrounded by multiple defenders, well, suddenly it gets a lot more difficult for him. And when he and Missouri are unable to punish those double teams with shooting from the outside, it becomes an issue. So when you have Northweather and Cruz, who have both been really good shooters from outside so far, elite shooters, I would say. In fact, Cruz is hitting 48% from three on the year. Northweather 50%, 12 of 24 so far. So not the most attempts in the world, but still, that's a decent sample. Northweather can really shoot the ball, And he's a good ball mover, too. So a guy listed at 6'11" who can do all of these things offensively, well, it's obvious why he's very additive to the team. The problem is, as I've pointed out before, if you're going to play Jacob Cruz and Luke Northweather together, unfortunately in the SEC, that's going to be a layup line. I mean, defensively, that's going to be a huge issue. The problem is, I just think the trade-off is worth it for this particular team because, as I said before, if you want to try to put the best defensive squad out there, well, that probably includes Sean Phillips and Mark Mitchell, who to me aren't compatible offensively. So you've got to make a trade-off somewhere. To me, the better trade-off for this team is to try to be elite offensively as opposed to being elite defensively, because I don't think being elite defensively is an option for this team. At least there's a path forward. Surround Mark Mitchell with shooting, especially if the big guy, the 6'11" guy next to him, can stand outside and not only just stand and catch and make open shots, but pass the ball as well. A good part of the offense is Luke Northweather. Again, it's not going to be pretty defensively if you play that lineup together, but especially when Jaden Stone comes back, that could be the makings of a really, really good offense. So let's try to do that. That's just my opinion. I think the trade-off is worth it. And even if it doesn't work at the end of the year in terms of making the NCAA tournament, I think this is your best shot at it. And as I discussed before on the program, obviously Missouri is giving Eli Drinkwitz just short of everything he could possibly want, I would imagine, when it comes to football. That $4 million that he has to play with this offseason, that's going to go a long, long way, whether it's, again, shoring up the offense, the special teams, whatever angle he wants to take. Money is not going to be a problem for him. Well, I do wonder sometimes if because Missouri's gone so hard all in on football here, especially recently, well, I wonder if Missouri's basketball transfer portal class, especially this past season, might have suffered a little bit because regardless of my subjective thoughts on this latest transfer class, objectively speaking, we just didn't bring in any players this offseason who were proven commodities at the high major level, other than arguably Sebastian Mack, who played at UCLA for a couple seasons. You had a pretty good idea of what you were getting in Mack. But when it came to Sean Phillips, a guy who never played more than 50% of the available minutes in his career at Arizona State or LSU, his freshman year for that matter, Javon Porter, of course, played at Pepperdine and also at Loyola Marymount. He's never played at this level. And Luke Northweather, while he had played a couple years at Oklahoma, again, the minutes were just never there in a significant way to make a true judgment. But so unlike the previous year where you had Mark Mitchell, who is quite simply put, a guy who played at Duke, who is a high-level proven player in the ACC, and yet here comes Cooper Flagg, the presumed number one overall pick. Well, Missouri, I think, was opportunistic there, did a nice job of convincing Mark Mitchell, hey, come here. You'll get more minutes, more action, and you'll fit well in Dennis Gates' offense, by the way. All of that is true. I'm just wondering, Missouri didn't get anybody close to that Mark Mitchell level. I've got a couple questions. Again, that push-pull between football and basketball and budgeting, how much of that is a factor? And frankly, also, maybe Mark Mitchell was just kind of an outlier. Again, that Cooper Flagg situation doesn't come around every year, especially for a program like Missouri with that opportunity. So maybe we just need to reassess our expectations for the portal in basketball moving forward. And by the way, speaking of expectations, well, expect to be paying more money for your football season tickets next year. I'll talk about that moving forward here in just a little bit. But you know what? NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's why live betting with FanDuel is so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets, of course, as the action unfolds. I'm talking every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. And tonight, well, we do have some Thursday night football for you. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 4.5-point favorites, actually now 5.5-point favorites, over the Atlanta Falcons on Thursday night football. I'll just say this. I think I don't have a strong take here either way, but when you get to this point in the NFL calendar, I don't really like backing teams that don't have anything to play for. I'll just say that. But if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. It is FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. And Laird Veach, the Missouri athletic director, is being very open and honest with us here lately. Your prices are going up, not just your ticket prices, but likely your parking prices as well. This is the cost of doing business and the cost of being competitive in the SEC, quite honestly. And I'll say this. I'm certainly not going to shame anyone who throws up their hands and says, you know what, the heck with this. I'm tapping out. I can't take any more. The prices are getting too high. Of course, that's everybody's individual decision, and I certainly don't blame anybody for saying, you know what, maybe I'll just go to 3 or 4 home games instead of paying for all 6 or 7 or 8, whatever. It was 8 this year, right? So whatever it might be, I understand everybody's decision-making there. The good news is, while obviously on the margins, this is going to cost Missouri a few season ticket holders, it seems like the big picture, well, the demand is there. Certainly the north end zone, this whole complex that's being built as we speak, well, that's evidence of that. Lots of demand for those things. I think they're all sold out, by the way, at this point, as far as I can tell. But it sounds like on average, the ticket prices, according to Veach, are going to go up about, say, $22 a game per ticket, so maybe $150 a year, something like that, for your season tickets. Which again, if you got 4 seats, something like that, well, there's an extra $600 you're going to have to come up with next season. Now, obviously, some seats, this is an average or a median, perhaps. I think it was a median actually. So some seats are going to be much lower than that in terms of increases, and some will be higher. Obviously, you can figure out which ones are going to be higher and which ones are going to be lower. Another thing that was interesting and caught a few Missouri fans' eye is that it's now expected that the capacity next season with the north end zone construction complete will be right around 60,000 people. And I have to say that definitely caught my eye too, because, well, my memory, and it was indeed confirmed out there, the original number put out there by Mizzou was 65,000. So I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed that the Missouri is going with even less capacity than it did when the south end zone was. That whole thing took Missouri down from 71,000 to about 62,000. It was my understanding that attendance, or that the capacity, I should say, was going to bump up a few thousand there. Well, that appears to not be the case anymore. I'm curious to see the reasoning there, what happened, what changed. I guess we will figure that out here in the coming days and weeks, I am sure. I'm sure I'm not the only Missouri fan who's going to be curious about that. But again, if you want good football, it's going to cost you. That's the message I'm giving to you here. So, hey, thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou, by the way, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 podcast network. By the way, you already live your team every day. Now take it up to the next level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club and get Locked On Mizzou with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month. Or $50 a year. Just go to lockedonmizzou.supercast.com, and that'll get you exactly where you need to go. And by the way, if you're a Spotify person, take a screenshot. If I'm in your yearly Wrapped, if I'm one of your top listens, send a screenshot, put it on social media, tag @LockedOnPodcasts, tag the national network, and you'll get a free month of the Everydayer Club. So you know what? Until next time, I am John Miller. Thanks as always for listening to Locked On Mizzou.